All right, we can go ahead and get started. Well, welcome everyone, and thank you for attending our customer brown bag session on logging. My name is Lisa Carnes, and I'm one of our CSMs here at Sumo Logic, and I'm going to get things kicked off here for us. If this is your first brown bag, just a quick recap. So we launched this series back in April 2023, and we have them on the second, third, and fourth Tuesday of every month. And they're designed to provide opportunities for our customers to spend some time with one of our subject matter experts around a specific topic. And so today, I'm excited to have one of our lead technical advocates, Melissa. She's going to be covering open telemetry with Sumo Logic. And then we also have Jeff. He's one of our solutions engineers, and he's going to help with supporting questions. And speaking of questions, if you have any, feel free to put them in the chat. I've opened it up to everyone. You can also use the Q&A windows as well. And then we'll also leave some time at the end for questions too. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and kick it over to Melissa to get us started.
Hi, everybody, and welcome. So we'll get started. So this is, I guess, related to logging, but as a lot of folks probably already know, OpenTelemetry actually collects, we'll go over this agenda in a minute. OpenTelemetry actually does collect logs, metrics, traces, and event data. So we're going to go over what is OpenTelemetry and why does it matter? And then we're going to get into learning about the Sumo Logic distro for OpenTelemetry, and then look at what has Sumo Logic done to contribute back to the project, and then what our overall sort of like Sumo Logic with OpenTelemetry roadmap kind of looks like. We're going to talk about the remote management beta, and then we'll close off with some useful links and resources. So what is OTEL? And, why does it matter? So this slide kind of goes into like a general history on OpenTelemetry. I think some folks kind of already know some of this, but basically, here we basically see an XKCD comic that kind of points and pokes fun at the increasing number of standards in an attempt to unify what is available, only to end up with an additional competing standard. So on the left, we basically see that Open Census and Open Tracing were, the original sort of projects. They came out of Google. Since the projects basically shared the common goal of data unification, they merged in May of 2019 and then went under the CNCF governance. So that is what makes up OpenTelemetry, right? Which is now backed by a bunch of major vendors, Sumo Logic included. And it's had sort of an incubating status within the CNCF. So the foundation work is basically helping to prevent the problem identified by Grace Hopper and that XKCD comic. We basically don't want multiple competing standards. And I know basically these older projects are all basically brought into OpenTelemetry. And this image says it's from the DevOps Institute because I used it in 2022 when I did a different talk. But no, I am the meme queen. Like, the memes here are I am the meme queen. Anyway, so telemetry pipelines. So this is kind of going into like a high level overview. So transparency around data collection is really vital. We know that having a vendor neutral format is important for data collection processes. And with that in mind, basically, we can take a look at what a telemetry pipeline entails. So it routes the data in the form of logs, metrics, and traces from where it's generated to wherever it needs to go, which often is on, can be on disparate backends. We know this because we know that people might be using a vendor like Sumo Logic, or they could be using a mixture of different vendors for actually ingesting that data and reading it back out. This also intersects, with the way in which routing the data is basically expressed in monitoring. Telemetry pipelines not only filter the data, but then produce enriched metadata that's available to various backends regarding disparate information, such as Kubernetes container information, region information, things like the geo IP information and other sort of logging and trace and metrics data. So you can kind of see so open telemetry, or OTEL, is an open standard for collection that is vendor agnostic. It's essentially a format for all of that data. It started out with being only a format for trace data, and it attempted to sort of unify the receivers. So it comes from unifying those projects mentioned before, and it captures all of that logs, metrics, trace data and other application telemetry data to whatever backend of your choice. On the right, you kind of see what the data pipeline looks like and its corresponding components. So this kind of represents an extremely basic setup that would just have a receiver, a buffer, and an exporter, and of course a processor. Typically the pipeline chains, buffers and processors, and that can take data from, the buffer and then analyze or transform the data. Many people basically automate like the compliance checks, for example, on those deployments. And they use software that takes the data from the exported logs and basically goes through various compliance and security checks. So anyway, a pipeline can basically get really complex, but typically keeps that pattern for every type of backend. And let me get to the next slide. Here we go. So this slide represents what we were calling OpenTelemetry 1.0. It kind of aims to contextualize what, the open source concepts explored in the prior slides in sort of an architectural diagram. We can see instrumentation layer, the collector, and then the backend. We also see a hodgepodge of vendor-provided collection instrumentation, right, and backends. So that's what data collection typically looks like without the OpenTelemetry standard. Generally speaking, we can break down the observability architecture into those three layers. The first one is actually generating that data. So the logs, the spans, the metrics. This happens through the instrumentation layer, which is tightly coupled with the program code. It can be handled manually, automatically, or semi-automatically. So with the solutions available just a few years ago, you'd have to have a separate library for handling each of those signals. The next one is basically the collector, or the agent. So you would basically want to keep a small footprint on the instrumentation library for, ease of understanding your architecture. The collector comes in handy with providing all sorts of processing capabilities, buffering, and then handling connections to the backend. It also provides enrichment capabilities, which basically attaches the metadata about the origin of the data. So that basically helps you navigate the signals, which now basically include information about the source. So that goes back to things like the instance ID, the Kubernetes pod, whatever custom tags you have, and so on. And then the backend, of course, is going to store the data and then provides a query and visualization capabilities. So that's what people use when monitoring what's going on in real time. As you can see, there's a lot of moving parts to each layer. Also, there are several instrumentation libraries available through different vendors. So when you want to switch from one to another, you might run into some issues. You might have already invested some time in writing integrations, which use sort of disparate APIs with unique configurations, and all of that. And that would likely need to be redone when switching, let's say, between libraries. Anyway, this is the world without OTEL. So we can take a look at the world with OTEL. So again, this is on the left, we see the separate collection. And then on the right, we see the OpenTelemetry collection. Basically, what you see here is a unified collection methodology, which a few years ago we kind of thought of as a unicorn, and we didn't think that we'd be able to do it like right away. But I think now we're actually, like, we as a vendor with our collector have been able to actually accomplish this. A lot of other folks have been able to accomplish this. And one of our like principal engineers had come up with this idea of like observability 1.0 and 2.0. I really appreciate sort of like that before and after state that was outlined. He basically said that overall, we haven't really, like at the time, we had not moved from 1.0 to 2.0 yet, but the community has made a lot of effort into actually adopting that. So if you recall, all the stuff on the left basically requires a separate library and agent for each of the signals. So that's not the case necessarily with OpenTelemetry, where pretty much anything except the backend is streamlined and provided by the initiative. So there are like more common libraries and collectors. And sorry. I need to remember to take a breath in between. Um, so basically, the vendors can provide like their own distributions, like Sumo Logic, we're able to provide our own distribution, but they all like are going to share a lot of the same core code because we want it to be we want to basically provide a vendor agnostic solution. So we now have a single library, obviously, that can handle instrumentation, both manual and automatic. But then with OpenTelemetry, you also have a single agent or collector, which allows people to plug in a bunch of different data sources and then correlate those signals. So it includes, a rich set of processors and exporters for open standards and use with multiple vendors. So we'll get into the next slides now. So why OpenTelemetry and why now? So it's kind of the foundation for elite performing teams in DevSecOps these days. You have highly converged telemetry, and it kind of eliminates the data silos across IT infrastructure. It simplifies analysis across increasingly deep system architectures. Again, you want that small footprint. Observability-driven development. So you build a culture of continuous improvement in observability, and you build a culture of production feature prototyping and testing. And the monthly commits to OpenTelemetry have gone up a lot. These are figures I think from like 2020, but it's gone up a lot more than that. It's the second most popular project aside from Kubernetes out of the Linux Foundation. So in the big picture, why does OpenTelemetry matter? So not going into too much technical detail, right? It allows users to build and own their collection strategies without vendor lock-in. That's like the primary thing that we care about. OpenTelemetry puts the focus on analytics and actually getting information out of your data and not necessarily in the collection process and setting everything up for the collector. And OpenTelemetry is core to Sumo Logic's collection strategy. So again, this standardization allows like for the vendor neutral trace formats, that was the original project. And then it basically translates those to common span event formats, which are then easily utilized by big data tools to produce sort of in-depth analysis. Now, OpenTelemetry has moved on, I think, from just that alone, but it basically allows you to focus more on analytics and by helping you basically unify your collection and do some additional like automation for setup. So here we're going to learn about the Sumo Logic distro for OpenTelemetry. So this is just more our perspective on why we like what we actually provide with it. So we basically implement the vendor agnostic OTEL standard. And that basically entails that single agent collector so you can plug in and correlate a bunch of different signals and sources. Why it matters to us would be the no vendor or tech lock-in. So like in the past, you might have to stick with something like Jaeger, FluentBit, Dynatrace, et cetera, et cetera. And now we can all kind of come together. You have a single agent for logs, metrics, traces, and events. So our distro, here's just a set of supported platforms for our distro. Obviously, Linux, Kubernetes is a big one for us, Docker, Mac OS, Windows. And then this is kind of what we've been kind of doing. So we were able to basically replace Prometheus with the OTEL distro for metrics collection. And all of these different signals are ones that we can correlate and basically plug into our collector directly. So why use our OpenTelemetry distro? Um, Basically, we have like simplified, quick, and unified collection across the logs, metrics, and traces. So it basically allows you to have less components for as Sumo Logic customers that you have to manage, which is nice because then you have like faster time for deployment, you have faster time for collection, you have fewer libraries and languages to deal with, fewer disparate agents. Again, it just kind of like simplifies the overall deployment process. And then some kind of interesting facts. So when we were using our own OTEL distro, we were able to replace 400 Fluent D collectors with 20 OTCs. And that isn't necessarily like the exact scaling. We can get into that later. But like basically when using our own OTEL collector, we were able to be about 5 times more efficient as well. But the thing is, that's going to vary for everyone's infrastructure. Sometimes people ask, is that going to work with my infrastructure? Is that going to happen with my stuff? And the answer is like maybe, but also maybe not, because the more collectors that you have to manage, it also depends on what you're moving over to a no-tail collector. The more collectors that you have to manage, the my understanding is that the more likely it is that you are gonna be able to converge on fewer ones within by using an OTC. Also, Fluent D specifically is for logs and specifically has had a lot of it is maybe not the most efficient. Um, and then of course, superior customization, control over your data collection. So let's go into the next stuff. And of course, saving costs. Everyone likes saving costs on easier pipelines. So OpenTelemetry contributions. So these are things that Sumo Logic has done to contribute upstream to OpenTelemetry. Um, Basically, we have this relationship and versioning policy where we basically release our distribution within 1 week of each OpenTelemetry collector release. So we make sure that everything is kind of aligned with the upstream project. The Sumo Logic distribution for OpenTelemetry again is essentially related to like our collector, and it enhances your monitoring capabilities with optimizations for our API while still supporting all of the functionalities of the standard collector. So let's get into the next slides. And you can take a look at our versioning policy if you're super curious about it, but you're probably not that curious about our versioning policy. So we adopted the Astronomy Shop demo environment too, which is actually also very exciting for other reasons. It's the open source demo environment that Sumo Logic, along with other collectors, have contributed to. The Astronomy Shop is like a microservice-based distributed system intended to illustrate the implementation of OTEL in a real-world environment. And it's not managed by us, it's managed by the community. So it's in part managed by some of us, I think, but mostly the rest of the community. So it's pretty cool if people want to check that out. We also have a prior brown bag session that shows how we use the Astronomy Shop environment. I think Jeff is on right now. Say hi, Jeff.
Hello.
Yeah, Jeff did that one. So you could check that out as well if you're super curious. Um, I don't know if you wanted to share anything or if you're just good.
No,
Okay.
that's good.
Okay, I think we're good. So yeah. So this is actually this is interesting. This was from Observability Day at KubeCon US. And this was a recording from Perk, who used to actually work at Sumo, but now works at Canonical. And this is where he actually details the journey from FluentBit, FluentD, and Prometheus to using the OpenTelemetry collector and all of the lessons learned with that migration. We also, so if you pull out your phones and you scan this, you can actually check out the talk. I don't think we need to watch the whole talk. It's gonna, but it's an interesting one if people want to see like sort of what happens with OTEL in action. No, I don't want to listen to that. Ah, sorry. Okay, so and then these are just upstream contributions and also very much worth checking out. Basically, this auto instrumentation is basically the way that people can automatically set up, I guess, their instrumentation. It adds tracing capabilities to an application without the need for developers to manually modify its source code. So it helps anyone using OpenTelemetry by making it easier to track and understand what's happening inside of their programs. So you can collect the data about how your programs are performing, identify performance bottlenecks and errors, and gain insights into the behavior of applications. So it saves people time. I think it basically, I remember that some folks had given me numbers like that essentially something that took them maybe several hours. I think we used to have labs that took like 8 hours long to set up manual instrumentation. We were able to cut that time down with auto instrumentation to like maybe 20 minutes for some of the use cases. And that's pretty big. That's pretty big for the customer. Some auto instrumentation languages we basically have working with OTEL include Go, Istio, Kubernetes tracing, JavaScript, Java, .NET, Python, and Ruby on Rails. The ones that are in bold are the ones that we've actually done upstream contributions to, or that the OTEL team has done upstream contributions to. There's also PHP auto instrumentation upstream, and there's kind of an interesting blog post if you wanted to check that out. So yeah, you can do the QR code thing. Here's just kind of some, things that you can do if you ever wanted to contribute to the upstream project. Basically, like, don't be shy if you really want to do this. If you really want to put in sweat equity, I think it can be worth it. Basically, if you don't know where to start, you can go through the issues that are labeled help wanted or good first issue. And then basically go through, like in that example, it would be OpenTelemetry Java projects. But frequently it's enough to just basically like leave a note that you'd like to start working on a given issue. And then if the scope of work is big, they might split things up and then give you a specific PR or something. So specific instructions are available in each repo. You can read through them and kind of get an idea of the overall guidelines. But yeah. And there's, of course, a contributor license agreement, which is fine. I mean, it sounds scary, but it's not scary. It's just so that your first commit gets accepted. A simple process that's pretty much described in the documentation. So now we get into roadmap things. And I'm hesitant to really even call this a roadmap because it's very high level and this is like past stuff as well. So this is like a history on how Sumo Logic got involved with OpenTelemetry and different things that we did when first getting wrapped up into it. And I think we wanted a non-exclusive telemetry that maximizes that interoperability. And we were basically all in kind of earlier on into this project. Our first Okay, we launched OTEL Real User Monitoring in August of 2020, but then our first OTEL distro was released June of 2021. And we've been basically working on, it looks like op-amp protocol for a while. We'll talk about that later. But we've been on our way to basically try to accomplish all of this in the last, I guess, what is it, 4 years? This is just kind of what we did last year, just to highlight. So upstream contributions for auto instrumentation libraries, auto discover services on your server using OTEL collector, languages and libraries, agents and collector management via APIs, which is always really good. And then of course, this is in bold. We finally did unified collection with logs, metrics, traces for Kubernetes, and then profiling. So I did want to get into like what we mean by unified collection, what was so exciting about it. If you were super curious, you can also like look at our, I think this goes back to the press release, if I remember correctly, or like a blog post. So you can take a look at the QR code and look at what we've said about it. This was released around KubeCon US, I think in November. Yeah, October, November timeframe of last year. So this was with Sumo Logic Helm Chart v4, which fully unified the OpenTelemetry pipeline to provide the real-time operations and insights for digital business through unified collection, which basically, again, you're putting the logs, metrics, traces together, auto instrumentation. We've been doing that for a while, but I think this was just like an updated version, correlated to telemetry and auto instrumentation, pre-canned configurations, which again, like I think we've been building for a while, but it basically, it's running a single agent for all data types, allows for a smaller, more efficient data collection footprint, and then gives customers quicker application infrastructure setup. And then, of course, there's the blog, a video on intro to OTEL, and then a guide if people wanted to check out the guide page. Oh, nope. Oh, that's where it goes. Okay, well, I'm gonna keep going. What's next for the OpenTelemetry project? So as we basically step into the future, OTEL basically has to grow beyond unifying the receivers and collection agents. So now that a lot of the community has converged on that, and it's been, I don't know if it's been fully accomplished, but it's been like largely accomplished. The new wave of work that's coming from the project seems to be more focused on ease of use and automation. So there's already been things like auto instrumentation, but it's already basically, we're in a point where we're starting to focus on the standards for agent collector management with Open Agent Management Protocol, or OPAMP compliance. I think there were some slides already that mentioned it, but I didn't get into a lot of detail in those. The OTEL standard basically is going toward this trend of trying to accomplish remote management of vast fleets of data collection agents that align with the OPAMP protocol. This basically ensures ease of use via efficient agent management by facilitating real-time agent status reporting and configuration management en masse. So OPAMP basically touts a variety of security features, including things like auto updating capabilities that support both upgrades and downgrades. It's got TLS certificate rotation and robust connection credential management systems. So there's obviously going to be more of a focus on security as well. So these automation features basically enable the secure communication between agents and servers. So it minimizes potential threats that might be involved. The most notable feature OPAMP unlocks for observability vendors that most people will care about is the streamlined remote management. So OpenTelemetry agents have intricate functionalities and demand precise configurations to capture data accurately. So the unified collection on fewer agents is really good, but then what happens when you unify all of the data, right? You might need more ease of use for configuration for those agents themselves. You might need dynamic adjustment capabilities from OPAMP based on agent status reports and the ability for these agents to report to an OTLP compatible backend. You might want to basically keep track of agent-specific metrics dynamically. So like if you have resource usage and data processing rates that you're trying to keep track of, that's something that we would like to unlock. So this ensures that basically agents function with desired thresholds and that they function securely, and it fosters proactive management without practitioners necessarily experiencing that burnout. So this is kind of fun. I wrote a blog post about it. I wrote people in with the memes so that they listen to the boring parts too. But yeah, unified collection, I feel we've already somewhat accomplished it. And for us, the next stuff that we want to do for OTEL would be that ease of use and automation. So talking about that, here's some upcoming features. So easy data onboarding to monitor your infrastructure with just a few clicks. That's the goal. We're setting up an intuitive UI that requires no server access. We want to group collectors using tags for easy configuration management, and we want to support data filtering and masking and pre-built data collection templates for the apps that are in our app catalog. OTEL agents often undergo updates or require new packages to enhance their data collection capabilities, right? So OpAmp basically simplifies that process, making the distribution and installation of these packages more straightforward and reduces the time for like the SREs to do extensive manual intervention. So that standardization will become really important to basically unlocking a lot of these sort of ease of use capabilities. So I did actually put together, well, I didn't put these slides, actually our PM put these slides together. So he had the brilliant idea to actually like try to explain this with, with images. So basically this is installing a collector on 2 servers using the team SecOps. So it's kind of visualizing what everything's going to look like. Let's say that you have to monitor Apache, so then you will create an Apache source template and then add the team SecOps. On saving the source template, Apache configuration is then available in all collectors with that tag team. Okay, so this is basically showing that you can push it to 2 of the 100 collectors, or maybe more. You might have a lot of collectors. This is kind of demonstrating the functionality of remote management and what that would kind of unlock for everybody. And this allows for a lot of additional scalability, which is really exciting, actually. And this is showing, I guess, with the example that you might be using our Apache application from the app catalog, I assume. So now that we've explained remote management, if you want to sign up for the beta, it's opening up February 15th. And so there's going to be easy onboarding to basically monitor your infrastructure. And again, that intuitive UI setup that requires no server access, support for data filtering and masking, and it allows you to group those collectors using tags for easy configuration management. So that's going to be very exciting. I'll keep this up in case people want to actually pull out their phones and take a look.
I think actually, Melissa, the site is for internal Sumo only. So what we would recommend is that they reach out to their account team
Oh
if they're
yeah,
interested in the beta.
they can also reach out to their account team, I guess. I think I don't recall if the open beta was for partners. Well, okay, I'll take a look at that. Thank you for letting me know. Useful links and resources. So, okay. So this is actually a Navigate Kubernetes Monitoring book. I had written this ebook. It's like maybe 50 pages, maybe 40 something pages. And it's going to teach you about modern applications, Kubernetes fundamentals, monitoring and troubleshooting with Kubernetes, unified collection and open telemetry. And then it goes into like common trends in Kubernetes observability, as well as monitoring and securing Kubernetes deployments with Sumo logic. And then resources you can use to basically learn more about Kubernetes and get certified with the help of Sumo logic, because we also have certifications for monitoring. And there's also another QR code if people wanted to look at that. And then we can get into the next set of resources. So these are just general useful links that I thought might be interesting. I don't know if these slides get shared out on the platform, like on YouTube or something, but it was too many to do a QR code for each thing.
I love the QR code though. That's a great idea for this, by the way.
Yeah. So this basically, if people wanted to check out the OTEL documentation, GitHub repositories, if they wanted to look at like what we do with auto instrumentation, that's exciting. Obviously the other resources that were in the slides would be like the OpenTelemetry IO blog, and then the spec for it. There's, I think, also Slack community and then our OTEL collector, which I think a lot of these were in the slide, in the prior slides anyway. This is just kind of condensed. And yeah, join us next time for a security session, February 20th, 2024 at 9 a.m. Pacific. We're going to be talking about cloud infrastructure security for AWS, and it's going to be JT Rakitan, which is a product marketing manager.
Thank you. Okay, so we have some time for questions. I filled the chat with a bunch of the links in case your QR codes, you didn't do the QR code method, but we want to open up to the floor. If anyone has questions for Melissa and Jeff, we'd be happy to take some time to answer them for you. So we'll just hang out here for another minute in case anyone's typing or wants to raise their hand.
Interesting. I'm just going through the different chats. It looks like everybody's been sharing links, which is good.
Yes, but no questions that I see so far. Okay, well, if there are no questions, then we can go ahead and wrap up for today. Melissa, great job. Thank you so much. That was super informative. We will have the recording up on our YouTube page as well for anyone who did not get a chance to join so that they can watch it later.
Okay, sounds good. So I'm hoping that this means that either everybody is like a genius and there's no questions, or but
No worries. It could just be that maybe the specific folks on this call aren't using it yet, and maybe that's why there's no questions. But everything was awesome. Thank you so much today, Melissa and Jeff, and I hope everyone has a great day.